Hello and welcome to CPP. In this video, we're going to talk about solving the biggest problem with Mac OS X. Well, at least my biggest problem with Mac OS X. So what is my biggest problem, as you probably seen from the thumbnail, is that the preview app is not really meant to be an image viewer. It's just a general viewer for documents. So we're gonna fix that with C++ code, and we're gonna create an image viewer for macOS, Windows, and Linux with C++ and Qt. Alright, let's get into the most fun part and create the project. Alright, let's add a resource. I'm just gonna paste the icons. Same as the last time, the icons are from Google Material Icons library. A link will be in the video description. Go ahead and save it and close it. Let's go ahead and design the main window. The main window will be pretty simple. It will just have a next and previous buttons and QGraphics view in the middle. The buttons we want to be in the middle of the page, so I'm going to use two vertical spacers. And we don't want any text on the buttons. In a vertical layout, let's go ahead and copy. Let's add a graphics view. This is gonna be the previous button. The other one is gonna be the next button. Something that we want to change is the focus policy for this. Let's go ahead and search for focus. Well, basically this is because we will handle events in the main window. What we will do is we will make the arrow keys left and right. We will handle events for those to go to the next and previous picture in a folder. And we will have events like double click for fit in view, and the mouse scroll wheel will zoom in and out of the picture. For the main window, we want the wheel focus, and for the graphics view, we want no focus. So let's select the main window and select a horizontal layout. I'm gonna just set the margins to 0. I don't like the default margins. Let's name this image view and save the main window.ui, and we can close it. So we're gonna need to add two classes. We're gonna have one class that's gonna handle the file. It's gonna take a path and it's gonna search for all the supported image files in that folder, and it's gonna give us the next and the previous file. So let's call this class files. We could call it like files, I don't know, explorer or something like that. You can come up with a better name for it. This will have a few functions. The functions will be, we want it to be more generic, so we're gonna set the extension from the outside of this class. We're gonna set the extensions that that these files class will support. So we want a function to set extensions. We want a function to open file. Open file will be just open the first file in a path. So that will take a full path to a file. It will scan the folder to get the files with the supported extension, and then it will create a list that will allow us to call next file and previous file after that. The public interface will be set extensions with a list of extensions that we want to support. Open file, which is going to take a full path as a parameter. Then we'll have next file and previous file. Both will return a QString, which is going to be a path to the next and previous file. Two functions that tell us if we have another next file or a previous file. So we have two functions for that. We will have a function that will return a QString, which is going to be the current file name. We're gonna also have few private members. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's go ahead and code that. First, let's include QStringList. All right, let's start the implementation. We don't really need a constructor. We could have the QString list of supported extensions in the constructor as a parameter. We're not gonna do that for now. We could just remove it. It's kind of up to you. You can do it either way. Let's go ahead and include the things that we need to include. We don't need to include QString because it's included in the header already. So here in open file, we're gonna create a Q file info. We're gonna take from that current file info, we're gonna take the current directory. We're gonna set current file path and the current file name. We're gonna scan the directory for the supported extensions. We're gonna save that into our file name in current path. We're gonna search for the index of the current file because the file that we got a full path might not be the first in the directory. So we're gonna scan for that index, and based on that index, we're gonna set the has previous and has next members of this class. So we will know if we have next or not. To navigate to the next file, we want to create a file info for the current file path. We want to create a QDIR, and then we want to search for the index in our file names in current path. Then if the index is not out of range, we want to get the absolute file path from the QDIR and return that. In this situation, that it means that we have a previous file because we can navigate to the next file. So here we want to check if index is equals to file names in current path size -2. So if the current file is one before the last one, then we want to set has next to false because we are about to go to the last file. So the current file path will be the next one. So we are going to index +1. So we set our current file path and our current file name from that, and then we want to return current file path. Previous file is gonna be pretty similar to the next file. Just we're gonna need to change the checks just a little bit. We could do if this would be like a performance problem. For example, we could store the Q file info and the QDIR and get everything from that, but I don't think it's gonna be a problem. So we could store that if we would have performance issues. So yeah, let's just do it like this for now, and yeah, we know how to improve performance a little bit if we want. We can cache this. I don't think there's a big performance hit if we create those on the fly. We should be fine. But yeah, nevertheless, it's a thing to keep in mind. If we can go to a previous file, that it means that it has next. So if index is equal to 1, so if we are at the file that's at the second file basically, then has previous, it's gonna be false because we are about to move from the second file to the first and we don't have anywhere to move next. Here we need to return current file path. Okay, now we are gonna need to add a new class. That's gonna be something like the manager for the QGraphicScene. QGraphicScene is the backend for the QGraphics view, the view that we have added into the main window. So let's go ahead and call this class QSceneManager. We want this to be derived from QObject. So this will have an instance of our files class, and it will manage the scene. It will read the file from the disk. It will display the picture on the QGraphics scene. Let's go ahead and add the functionality. We're gonna need a function to return the QGraphics scene pointer. We're gonna need a function to return the supported extension list, function to open an image, and we're gonna need functions to do the navigation to the next and the previous image. We're gonna need functions to retrieve if we have a next or a previous image, another function to fit the image in view, and the function to check if a file is in the supported files list. That function will only check the extension. As for the signals, we're gonna have a signal when the image is changed. That's gonna send file name as a parameter, and we're gonna respond to that signal in the main window. So whenever the image is gonna change, the main window title will incorporate the file name. We're gonna have a private show image, which is gonna actually do the reading and display it into the QGraphicScene, or add it into the QGraphicScene, and the view then will display the image. As a data members, we're gonna have an instance of our files class and a pointer to a QGraphicScene, and a QStringList, which is gonna be the supported extensions. Let's go ahead and code all of that. Let's start the implementation. Let's start with the includes that we need. In the constructor, we're just gonna initialize the image scene pointer with a new QGraphicScene. We're gonna pass this as a parameter, as a parent parameter to the QGraphicScenes. We want the scene manager to automatically delete image scene when it gets out of scope. And we want to set extension for our files to the image extensions that we set in here. For the open image, we just call files open image, and then we call show image with a path. So we want the files to scan the folder with the image and initialize its list. After that, we want to call show image with a full path. For the next image, we want only call show image with files.nextFile. For the previous, we call show image with files.previousFile. As next, and as previous, we just return files as next. For the fit in view, we need to make sure that we have items in our scene, at least one. If there's any items in our image scene, and if image scene views dot size. We want to make sure that we have items in our scene and that our image scene has been set as a scene to a view, because otherwise we can't fit the item into view if we don't have at least one of each. So we know for sure that we have exactly one item, which is going to be a QPixMap item, a QGraphicSpixMap item, and it's going to store the image. And we only gonna have one view because we're gonna set the scene in the main window to the view from the main window. We know that we're gonna have one, but it's good practice to check anyway. So we want to get a pointer to the view. To do that, we call view at 0. So we want the first view, then we want to call view.fitInView, and we want to fit in view the first item of the image scene, items at 0, and we want to set the parameter for the aspect ratio. We want to keep aspect ratio. We don't want the view to distort the image. Then we want to call set scene rectangle to be the rectangle of the first item. For the file supported, we need to loop to our image extension, and we want to check if the full path of the file ends with whatever we have in the extension. But note that in image extensions, we have this character that we want to remove. We have the star. We have it in this format, but we actually want to check if the file path ends in one of these. So we need to remove the first character from each of the extensions. So to do that, we call x. We are taking this by copy, so we can assign to it x.remove, and we want to remove from position 0 to the length of 1. And then we want to check full path ends with whatever it's left. So if that is true, we return true. Otherwise, we return false. Alright, in the show image, I don't know, maybe we could split this into two functions, but it doesn't really matter that much. In the show image, we want to clear the image scene, so we call image scene clear. We want to delete whatever was there before. Then what we want to do is create an instance of QImageReader. We use ImageReader because we could directly initialize a pixmap from the full path. That will work too, but we are using ImageReader because ImageReader takes care of the transformation. Like for some images, if you shoot the image in a portrait mode, the image is gonna be rotated if we just initialize a QImage or a QPixmap directly from the file. So we want to do the QImageReader and set auto transform, and that will rotate the image into the right position. Reader, we are going to initialize it with full path. Then we call ImageReader.set auto transform to true. This will read the EXIF of the image and will do the rotation if necessary. So we want to get a QImage from that image reader. So we call read, and then we want to check if image that we got from the reader is not null. So if that is not null, then we create a pixmap. Then that pixmap, we're gonna add it to the scene, to the QGraphicScene, and we're gonna update. This will trigger the views to update. Also, what we want to do is we want to emit our signal that image changed files.get current file name. As I said, this signal is gonna be connected to a slot into the main window, and we want to update the main window title to incorporate the file name of the current image. The comparison, we need to do it case insensitive. So if the file has the extension PNG, for example, and it's written with uppercase letters, we should consider that a valid file. A scene manager reference, and we will have a window title, and we will override some events. We want double click to be fit in view. We want to drag and drop images from the desktop, so we want the user to be able to drag and drop. And we want to override key press event. We want the left and the right keys to be next and previous image. And we will override the wheel event, the mouse wheel event. We want that to be the zoom. Also, we're gonna have slots for our next and previous button click, and we're gonna have a slot for image changed. We're gonna also have a show open dialog. This application is not really meant to be used as you open the application and you open the file. It's gonna be associated with the files, with JPEG files in the OS, and the user will just double click the file or drag and drop another file on top of that. But we will have an open dialog too. It's gonna be a Control O or Command O on OS X keyboard shortcut. It's not gonna have a button, as you already saw that we didn't put a button. Speaking of this, we should put icons. Let's go ahead and do that. We want to choose resource. This is the previous button. This is gonna have the left icon. This is gonna have the right icon. Also, we want the buttons. Let's go ahead and make them flat, so no border for the buttons. I think it looks nicer. It's just a preference. You don't have to do that if you don't like it. Let's go back to the main window. We've discussed a little bit of what's gonna be in here. So let's go ahead and code all of that. So we want forward reference to our scene manager. We want the scene manager to be passed in as a reference to the constructor, and we're gonna have a reference as a member. Also, we're gonna have as a member QString. That's gonna be the default window title. Let's call this image viewer. So this is gonna be the window title is gonna be based off this. So it's gonna be image viewer, then I don't know, a dash maybe, and the file name, the current open file name. That's why we are keeping the window title in here. The only public function this is gonna have is gonna be open image. It's gonna take a QString reference as a parameter. Start with the events. So we want key press event, we want wheel event, Alright, let's start implementing. We want to include scene manager, and we want to include the rest of the cute stuff that we are gonna use. So we initialize the reference, and then we want to set window title to the default. So in the beginning, the window is gonna just have the default window title, and then after that, we are gonna change it when an image is actually read from the disk. So we want to set scene for our image view. We are gonna call the scene function from our scene manager and pass that. We have only 3 connections. I'm not going to create a function to do the connections as I usually do. So we have the next button. We need to accept drops to the main window. So we need to toggle that, this accept drops. Click it, press enter, and also for the image view, we want to disable the accept drops. So we want to accept drops only to the main window. So for the image view, accept drops should be unchecked, and for the main window checked. Let's go ahead and save it. So we want to check here if Scene Manager is file supported, full path, and if that's the case, we want to open the file, and we want to call fit in view. Also, we want to call update buttons to enable or disable buttons in case we have next or a previous image. Key press event, here we will just use a switch for the event key, and then we want to do stuff based on the key. So if key left is pressed, let's go ahead and format this a little bit better. So if the key that was pressed is the left key, we just call previous image and break. In case the right key, we call the next image and break. So in case O key is pressed, here we want to check if the event modifiers are keys like control or shift. So we want to check if the event has modifiers, and that modifiers is Qt control modifier. So if that's the case, we want to call show open dialog, and we want to break. So basically key O is not gonna just be, if the user presses the O key, the user has to press Control O or Command O. We don't have any other case, we just have default case, which is gonna just be the Q widget key press event. For any other key, we just pass it to the parent and it can do whatever it wants with it. For the wheel event, we are interested in the direction which the wheel has turned. We have event angle data, and we are interested in the y coordinates because we are interested in the up down direction. If this is bigger than 0, we zoom in, else we zoom out. In double click, we just want to check the button, so we call event button, and we want to check if it's the left mouse button that was clicked. If that's the case, we want to call fit in view, and we pass it to the parent just in case QWidget does something else with the event. We don't really have to do it because there's nothing else happening on double click, so we could remove this line. On the drag event, here we need to get the data from the event that is called QMime data in Qt. So let's go ahead and call auto mime data equals event mime data. So we want to check if MIME data has URLs. We want to check that the user is trying to drop URLs into our application. If it has, we take those. We take a pointer to those actually. Or is this a list? Yeah, it's a list. We take the URLs. If the user drops more than one file at once, we are gonna just take the first one. Here you can add support if you want. This is a little side project if you want to do it. You can maybe modify the files to just take a list of files instead of scanning the directory. And then if the user drops like 3 images, for example, that will be your files, and just navigate through those 3 images that were set. This is just a side note. For now, we are just gonna take the first URL. We want to check if it's supported, and we call toLocalFile to get the path. That toLocal to the scene manager to the is file supported to check if it has the extension. If it has the extension, we want to set event accept proposed actions. If the file has the extension .jpeg or .png or whatever files we support, then we call event accept proposed action, and that will basically set up if the user actually drops the file onto our main window, then we can get the URL and open it. For that, we need the drop event. We take the URLs. Let's check the size too, even though this is not really mandatory because we know we only accept if it has URLs, and basically this only executes if the event has URL, so it's not really mandatory, but we can just check it. We take the first one and we call toLocalFile for it to get file path from the URL. Here we just call next image. On next button click, here we call previous image. On image changed, we just want to call set window title, and it's gonna be a QString with a format default title, and then the first arg will be the default window title, and the second arg will be the file name. So we want the default window title, which is gonna be the application name, a dash, and then in quotes we want to put the file name. To put quotes inside the string, if we don't escape it, you see that this quote is gonna end this string. To put quotes inside the string, you need to escape the quote with backslash. So you need a backslash quote. This is a single character which is gonna be a quote inside the string. Same here. And %1, that simple means that the argument 1, and %0 is gonna be the argument 0. Okay, moving on. Here we want to make sure if it has previous, we call QSceneManager previous. They are mandatory. The buttons are gonna be disabled, but we are calling the function from key press event. So here we are not disabling key press event. But doesn't matter what happens, we are not gonna disable that. So yeah, what we want to do is also call fit in view, and also we want to call update buttons. So whenever the image will change, we will make sure that the zoom level changes also, and we update the buttons. If there isn't any next image, then we disable the next button, and so on for the previous. So fit in view is just gonna be scene manager fit in view. Zoom in is just a view thing. We don't have to do anything for the scene. So we call scale, and let's say that we scale it like 10% for zoom in, not scene, it's scale. Sorry about that. So we want to call scale, and here we want the same image view scale, and here we want 0.9. We need to join all the supported extensions. We want to join those together, and that will be set as a parameter for the file dialog function that's going to open the dialog. So let's go ahead and do that. QString, we want to format it. Let's call this images, and in parentheses here we want the whole list of extensions together. So call arg, and here as a parameter to arg we call scene manager supported. How did we call it? Oh, we forgot about that. Yeah. So let's go ahead and add the function QStringList supported extension. So this just returns image extensions. I forgot to implement that function. Okay, we have it now. So we want to call supported extensions as a QStringList, and then we want to join it with a space in between each QString from that QStringList. We're gonna get a path from QFile dialog get open file name. Here we want this as a parent, we want it to be called open image. Here as a directory, what we could do is use something like Q settings, or remember it inside the main window where was the last path that was open, or we could do stuff like that if you wanted to. I'm just gonna pass an empty string there. That's gonna open the dialog in inside the folder where the application lives, I think, by default. But as I said, I don't plan to use this open dialog as often as possible. The plan is to associate the image files with this application and use it like that. This is extensions. This extensions filter for the get open dialog. We want the path to not be empty. If it's not empty, we call open image with path. And the update buttons is just gonna be UI previous button set enabled scene manager. So basically we could have done it the other way and have the scene manager emit signals for each time has next is changing or something like that. So we could do it like this. We pull data from scene manager each time, or the other way would be to make scene manager notify us whenever something change. We could have created two signals in scene manager and emit those signals each time has previous changed, and in the main window just update set enable for whatever bool value scene manager emits. Or we could do it like this and call update buttons, and in here get the data from scene manager and enable or disable buttons. It's two ways of doing the same thing. Here it doesn't matter that much how we do it. In some application it might, but yeah, here it doesn't matter as much. Oh, this is not right. This should be next image. Now let's go ahead into the main.cpp, and here we need to include scene manager. We're gonna need to create an object. We're gonna need to pass that object to the main window constructor. And also what we want to do, we want to get a path from the command line argument. So basically how the operating system is passing arguments, like if you associate your application with, for example, JPEG files, and the user double clicks a JPEG file, your application will receive the path to the file that was double clicked in this argument. So here we have two options. We can check this argc, or and if this is greater than 1, basically the first argument is going to be the path of your application, and if there are other arguments, those are either whatever the operating system is passing to, like if you associated your app with some type of file and the user double clicks one of those files, or if your application is run, like for example for a script, from a script, and or from some sort of a terminal, and the user just types in some arguments for your application. This is how you receive those. So we need QString variable. There's going to be a path, and then we're going to need to check the arguments. So we could do we could check directly the argc and argv, or we could get the arguments from the application, because we are setting here, when you create a Q application instance, you basically pass in both the number of arguments and the arguments themselves. So we could do a.arguments and receive a list of them, and we can check if arguments.size greater than 1, then image or path is going to be equal to arguments of 1. So we don't want arguments of 0, which is the first, because that's the path to the application. We want arguments of 1. And then here, before we show the main window, we want to check if not path is empty. So if we read something in there, if we have a path there, we want w open image of path, and we want to show our main window. So we can make the size a little bit bigger. So here, let's go ahead and put it like almost full HD in size. While creating this, I've learned that OS X doesn't actually send the file that is double-clicked as an argument, as a command line argument. So we're gonna need to create a class to inherit from the Q application and use our own application, in which only for OS X we will get the event that macOS X uses to send the path to our application. We want to add a C++ class. Let's call it image viewer application. So here we will actually use some if and defs to add stuff to this. First, let's include Q application. This will inherit Q application. And then what we want to do is use if and def, and the define that Qt has for OS X is Q_OS_macOS. So here we want, if we are on macOS, we want to have a signal that's gonna be void open file. We want if def, not if and def. Sorry about that. This is a good showcase of why override keyword is so powerful. You see we have an error here, and that's because I wrote void instead of bool. So we want if def Q_OS_macOS. So we want this to be available only if this is running on OS X. Let's go ahead and add the definition. Again, this will be if def the same macro. So we only want to add the event if that macro is available. So here we want to check if the event type is a file open. The include will also need to be guarded, because this event is not available on other OSs, only on macOS. After we got the event, we need to emit open file signal. We want the file, and we want to call Q application event function and pass in the event. And we need to return that, because this returns bool. Alright, now what we need to do is to go to the main.cpp, and instead of including Q application, we'll need to include our own IV application. This is gonna be an IV application. So here we're gonna need another if and def. So this we want this in the else, and also this. So we can just call it like this. Also we can do this after the window is shown. That should help. The graphics view will already have a right size and we will not have to worry about resizing it. So here what we want to do is we want QObject connect. Basically we are calling the static function connect, so we need to because we are not in a scope of a QObject or a QObject derived class, we need to fully qualify the connect. So this is the syntax. So we need to connect a pointer to a Q application, well, derived from Q application. So our IV application, IV application open file, and we're gonna connect that to our main window. So we need a pointer to a main window. We use the ampersand main window open image. That should be it. Let's go ahead and install the application, and hopefully I didn't make any mistakes. Oh yeah, we need QObject macro. We need a QObject macro in this class because we have signals. Alright, now we're gonna install the application on the OS X. So to do that, we're gonna build the release version first. So we want to switch to release here. And then let's just build and run. Alright, it runs. Let's go ahead and close that. We need to edit a file into the package contents. Basically, this is the place where the OS will look what file types your application could open. So here you should add the following. This is the stuff that I added. Basically, CF bundle document types has an array with bundle type extensions where we set PNG, JPEG extensions. We will want to save that and then we can install the application. Now you want to open a terminal and you want to navigate to the path where you have Qt installed in the bin folder. And here you're gonna have a tool called Mac Deploy Qt. This tool we're gonna use to create a disk image for easy install the application. So what we want to do is we want Mac Deploy Qt, and we want the path to the application, and we want to add -dmg. This basically is a parameter that instructs Mac Deploy Qt to create a disk image file for the application. Oh yeah, I forgot how to run the application. Yeah, alright, so we need to run this. This will take a few seconds. Alright, it ran without problems. So now let's go back to the folder and we have imageviewer.dmg. We have the disk image. We can copy this in some other location. If we just double click the disk image file, it will open. So we should be able to just drag and drop this to the application folder, and we have the app installed. After the installation is done, then we can go to the pictures, we can get info, and basically we can select our image viewer from this list and we can click change all. That's all for this video. Hope you learned something today. See you in the next one. Have fun. Bye bye.